One of the greatest ministries in this city, in San Antonio, Texas, is a ministry that was started by a man named Freddie Garcia. Mm-hmm. And Freddie was a junkie, and he was a gang member, and I think he was in L.A. this 30 years ago or so. And his testimony is that he just wanted, at the end of his rope, this sounds real spiritual, but boy, God heard it. He just cried out, "God, give me a break." Give me a break. And then somehow at that point he goes back to that very spot that the Lord began to work a change deep within his spirit. And the Lord met him right where he was. He met him in the language that he understood.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. God hears the attitude of our heart, not the words of our lips. I mean, the words of our lips are important because they should be an expression of the attitude of our heart. But what God is looking for is He's not looking for great oratory in praying. He's looking for real, genuine people praying. And I think the closest place where we get to being real is within our family. I don't know. We've had struggles in our family life. I mean, and we're having this program of family. We're not here to say, hey, we've got it all together. We're here to say we're on a journey. We're at least a little way down the road on the journey. But we're on a journey, and it takes God. It takes God.
And I don't. This is rising up in my heart because I think some of the ones who are probably watching from around the world are, realizing that, that giving my heart to Jesus and finding forgiveness has been an awesome thing. But what you may be feeling in the rejection from your family, the ones we love the most, can hurt us the most deeply.
Yeah.
It's not like the millions over the years that you've preached to, Sammy, where they're eternal souls and you care about them. But there's no way you can care about them like you can care about Tex, or like you can care about your own flesh and blood. And when something gets crossways, or Tex is struggling or hurting, the kids or grandkids hurt, then or they're offended. I've heard them. There's something I've said. I want that right. I want to get that right. But if Jesus is the issue, that's why we're not going to be able to have close fellowship, as some who are probably watching are feeling right now. That is a deep.
There's something, I hope I can express this quickly, so y'all cut me off if I don't. But, okay, Tex got it there already. Okay. But, I last time you guys were here, we talked about, I shared about my grandmother and how she prayed, but there's something that God did in me. My grandmother, and on back of that, I did not know anything about my heritage. And I only discovered in the last year this incredible heritage that I have in my family of people godly, love Jesus, original churches west of the Mississippi River, first churches, charter members of those, starting those churches, and I just discovered this great history. But one of the things that it did for me, it brought healing to my heart, and here's why. I had a praying grandmother. Now, my mother, I didn't know I had any heritage because my mother put me out of the house when I became a Christian. I remember one night, it was during the free speech movement back in the 60s, and I had preached at Free Speech Alley, me and 3 other guys, and the headlines of the Daily Reveille, the LSU paper, came out, Students Hold Revival in Free Speech Alley, quoted our testimonies. And anyway, I came in, and my mother had a copy of that paper. And man, she was mad. I mean, mad. She was angry because she said, "You have ruined the Tippett name," And she took a belt and had to buckle, and she beat me out of the house and slammed the door and locked it and said, "You don't ever come back here again." And I walked the streets of Brady Street in Baton Rouge, my tears soaking the pavement. Deep hurt, the rejection of a mother. But as time went on, I began to realize, and by the way, my mom eventually came to Christ and embraced what I do and loved me and all this. But that
she was one of his most ardent prayer supporters after that time. So it was really neat to see.
But I began to say, "Thank you, Jesus," because I saw something. I saw that it was, God used my rejection to enable me to go to the people like you're talking about,
That's
to
right.
go to people who are hurting, where I go in many places of the world, people are rejected by their families. But when I found out about my praying grandmother, it was not just a matter of being able to thank God, but I was able to actually embrace what happened with my mother at that time as the sovereign will of God, because I would have never been doing what I'm doing today if I had not gone through that. And so God had to allow me to experience rejection for a period of time so that I would be able to minister to those people that I would be going to minister
and rejection
to.
from your own family.
From my own family.
Not just from ones out there, but from your own family. That is, and the Lord's given you authority to be able to speak into the hearts of others who are going through that same thing, because He's rescued you.
I think that if people could see, hey, this is not something bad.
Yeah.
This is something good. This is something of God. And, that God will take that and God will use it for His glory. And, not everybody, though, has gone through that. I know you've been so blessed, and I
had a praying grandmother, praying aunts, and mom and dad. We went to church since I was a baby. We grew up in the church, and yet there was still an emptiness in my life. There was still something missing, even though I went to church all the time. And it wasn't until I was at college that 4 young people began to share with me about Jesus and a personal relationship. And it was one day at my college, I prayed and I said, Jesus, if you're real, like I've been taught about from my grandmother, from my aunts, from my mom and dad and others, would you come in and be real to me? And that night, Jesus Christ came to my life. And there was a distinct difference.
One of the interesting things about your family, we didn't know each other. She grew up in East Texas. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and 2 different states. And then her father was transferred her senior year of high school to Louisiana. I still didn't know her because she lived on the opposite side of town. But we met in college. I only went 1 semester to Southeastern. We met there that semester, and she came.
2 of the best things happened to me in my life. I came to know Jesus, so I'm going to heaven for eternity, and I met my future husband, Sammy. So that some good things come out of Louisiana.
But one of the things in all of this stuff that's happened to me in the last year in researching my family background that I discovered, which is incredible, the sovereignty of God deals, is her great uncle was the one who led my praying grandmother to Christ and baptized her, and we never even knew each other. Lived in 2 different areas, and her great grandfather actually moved on over into Southeast Texas, and so it's the incredible way God works among us. But here's an example. Let me ask you about this, David. What practical things come from praying with our children and praying for our children? I'll give you an example. I think it was practical that my grandmother prayed for me, her grandmother prayed for her, God brought us together, saved both of us, and here we are together, 40-something years later, serving the Lord. And so there's a practical result from praying people. I think sometimes men don't pray because they say, I'm wasting my time. Where's the practical result? Yeah. What are some from your, and you may not have an answer, I know I'm throwing this one at you here. What are some practical things that you see from praying for or praying with your children?
So we have 2 daughters in their 20s. Our oldest is 23, and then Katie just turned 20, and we have a teenage son, 17. But to our humbled amazement, Shirley and I will hear adults say, as they will hear Abby or Katie pray, where did they learn how to pray like that? And our response, we look at each other as if, we didn't take them through a course on prayer. We didn't send them off to a school of prayer. But Sammy, for years, they've just been around praying people. That they've been kind of on the edges, and at times brought in when they would be prayed over, when they'd be getting ready to go off, and they've just heard people pray. They've heard praying people pray, and there's something about developing the ability to listen while you're speaking, or listen before you speak, in the setting of prayer. And I'll say often, recently, I think repeatedly, just going back over that, because as a pastor, you're wanting to teach people, you're wanting to teach men how to pray. I've about decided the best way to do that is just get them in the middle of some other men who are praying.